Okay. There we go. That's what we need to hear. Okay, welcome everybody. Come sit, settle. We're running a drop late. Let's get going. Okay. So first I want to wish you a mazel tov for everyone who's here, and we are all together for this incredible kickoff. Baruch Hashem, over the years, we've done an amazing program called Systematic Avodah Initiative, where every day you take a small page of reading. And as you'll see, this is a gorgeous book. A special shout out to Ruta for working on this so hard, and for everyone else who's a part of making it happen. But there's a section of reading for that day. And through this practice of having a system of readings, you actually get to make avodah practical. You actually get to make your preparations, your hachanas for whatever is the upcoming Yom Tov real and practical and exciting. And through that, over the years, we've actually had incredible transformation. This time period, which is we call it the Chassidish New Year, is all about all of our Chassidish Yom Tovim. Right now, we're on the cusp of Rosh Chodesh Kislev, where after that is Tes and Yud Kislev and the Mitzvah Rebbe. After that is Yud Daled, which is the Rebbe's wedding anniversary. And basically every single week, there's an exciting Chassidish Yom Tov that you have the opportunity to work on your hiskashos. You get the opportunity to work on your Chassidishkeit and your connection, real deep connection to yourself through Chassidus. So that is tonight is the kickoff for that program. Tonight, we want to thank everyone who donates as a Chai Club member. Thanks to you that all of these programs happen, and thanks to everyone who sponsors all of our programs. So thank you so much for making this a possibility. If you would like to sign up, you still can. I think the early bird special finishes tonight. So tonight's your last chance to sign up. Shabbos. It's your chance to sign up for the program. Next week, B'ezras Hashem, this program, the way that it works is that before every Chassidish Yom Tov, we have a Farbrengen. At that Farbrengen, if you've done your reading and if you've done at least one journal entry in your personal journal a week, then we give out, at that Farbrengen, we give out gorgeous prizes. Sometimes it's Svarim, sometimes it's Shabbos, something for your Shabbos table, sometimes it's food, sometimes every time it's something exciting and different. So that is how the program works, and we are very, very, very happy with the turnout that's happened over the years and how much people have changed their lives and really connected to the Rebbe, to Chassidus, to themselves, to Hashem through this program. Tonight, we have the great zchus of having Rabbi Kaplan. He has actually spoken for us many, many years ago when we still didn't have the space. It was in my apartment in Montgomery Street, and it was such an incredible speech. And not only that, but he's been a teacher for many organizations over the years. And he is the principal of Cheder Chabad Monsey, and we have the great zchus of having him here speaking for us tonight. So thank you so much. Oh, yours.
All right.
Yeah.
In kindergarten, we call it mashke.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so we are faced with two general challenges. One is that we have two audiences, an online audience and an in-person audience. And the second is that I know neither of them. So generally speaking, Ma'amorim, when you learn a mimer, so the mimer starts off with a pasuk, and then we look for clues in the pasuk that are going to lead us into a discussion, like detective work. Like, how do we get into this? So I don't have any clues. And just to speak into the ear, that's not a Chassidish upbringing. And so we're faced with a challenge. So I don't know what the minhag is, the setting, and I'll take a little bit of what the clues that I have, and of course feel free to ask, to interrupt, and if it's too much, I'll let you know. Don't worry. And okay, so that's just by way of just to set an entry into our discussion. So my impression is that the goal of this Moised is to bring Hasidus into our lives in a very real way as something that actually impacts. It's something that we learn and we internalize the messages and we try to hold ourselves accountable that the knowledge that we have should actually affect our lives, should impact our lives. I would say that if we think about it, if I may, Hasidus, we like to bring Mishalim, right? So if we would think about the current capacity of technology, right? If we didn't discover anything new, we just used what we already have and we applied it in more ways, we could probably further simplify our lives in indescribable ways. We don't have to do, it's like you don't have to discover anything new. There's enough, we have enough information, and I think each of us have enough information in our minds that we could grow exponentially. There's so much we could do. But there's one of our challenges is if we know what we need to do. So now that we know already, we could start tomorrow. Why start today? We already know what it is. And the other is that we're busy, or just getting started is difficult. Whatever the different. So when we have a friend and we hold ourselves accountable, and we're going to sit down and someone's going to look at us and say, "No, what's happening?" Or so it's helpful. So then the question becomes, what's the place of a Fabrenyan of like additional information or more inspiration in that context? So first, I want to share a thought just as a tmicha, as a support for the general approach. First of all change is a revelation of Elikus. Okay, all personal change. When a person changes, that's the deeper light of Hashem, and I'll explain why in a moment. In other words, the Baal Shem Tov taught us that Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam, just being alive is a manifestation of Hashem in this world. Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam, in other words, every person is a candle of Hashem. It's not tied to what we're doing. It's not tied to our avodah. Just being alive in whatever state is a gili alikus. But so that's, why and how that is, that's one Indian. But in a deeper way, for a person to change is a special gili alikus. And why that is, in order to express this, I'll share with you a little anecdote. One of the very significant prokim of Tanya is Perek Tezvav. In Perek Tezvav, the Alter Rebbe famously speaks about the difference between learning something 100 times and 101. In other words, the Alter Rebbe really puts avodah on a pedestal. There's a Maimer, the Rebbe Maharash asks, the Rebbe Rashab, the Dibur Hamaskal of the Maimer is V'tahir Libeinu La'avdecha Be'emes. And the Rebbe Rashab asks that the statement is an oxymoron, it's a paradox. How could it be La'avdecha and not Be'emes? Right? In other words, if it's La'avdecha, what's avodah if it's not emes? If it's not emes, it's not avodah. So what do you mean la'avdecha be'emes? So avodah is like, that's the most important thing, the greatest. I mean, that's what Hasidus is all about. Okay, I know Hasidus is more than that. Hasidus isn't only, but maybe some of you learned Kuntres and Yonush will Teres Hasidus. Soon I'll get to the stories. I see I'm losing some of the. But the Kuntres and Yonush will Teres Hasidus is a famous, right in the beginning, it says, Lishanois Teva Midoiso. That the Indian of Chassidus is that we should change. So my friends and I were sent on Shlichus in 1993 after Chav Zayin Ador to Kfar Chabad. We left on Shlichus. Generally, the Shluchim would leave after Tishrei. For whatever reason, we left. We were sent out in Sivan, late spring of 1993. We arrived in Kfar Chabad and they set up who's going to be our Magid Shir. And the first class that we had, the rabbi sat us down and he rocked our world. He asked us a question. And he said, avodah, who's interested in your avodah? That's like, it's sheepish, right? The fact that something is difficult for you, who cares? It's so difficult for me. It's like, nobody's interested. How does that, right? And he said it in very sharp, he presented it as a question, right? This is not the conclusion, right? He said, imagine, and I'm embellishing a little bit. Imagine two people come to a king. They're appointed to do the same job, right? Every morning they have to be there to help the king get dressed and to make his bed, whatever it is. They're going to be the morning butler, the first shift. And one says to the king, listen, Your Honor, I need to get paid twice as much as the other person. Why? Because the other person, their whole life, they're an early riser. They always got up early. But me, I'm a night person. You don't understand. You know what it means for me to get up early? You have to pay me double. So we would understand what the king's response would be. Who's interested in your stories? So avodah is all about you. Who's interested in you? We were very taken by this question because this was like our whole life. What do you mean? It's all about avodah. Are you kidding me? And then when we heard his response, it was such a deep understanding, it was so profound. And this comes back to this idea. Change is Gilui Elikus. He said like this. A person, what we know that Hateva and Elikim are the same word. Basically, Hashem is hidden in nature. When a person is born learning and davening, so that's nature. They love to learn. You have a bookworm, whatever it is. You have a person, they don't have any tivus, whatever it is. Their serving Hashem has nothing to do with Hashem. It's their nature. So we're back to Mother Nature, whatever the story is. Who says there's a Hashem in the world? But when you have a person whose nature is to sleep, and they're Mishana Teva Mideisehem, they go against. So what power is it that gives us that koyach to do something that isn't our nature, that we can push ourselves in a way that's unnatural to us? The fact that we can do that proves that nature is the Eibishter. We reveal that Teva is actually Elikus. That's why our nature ultimately can't get in the way. So when you have a tzaddik who serves Hashem, it doesn't reveal godliness. When a tzaddik serves Hashem, it doesn't reveal godliness. Why? Because that's their nature. But when a person who's uninterested, unmotivated, serves Hashem, that reveals. How could you do that? In other words, what additional force is there that can get you to do things that aren't your nature? How can you do it? Nature should be the greatest force. It's all of the kus. Being that it's all of the kus, it's flexible. That's why you could go against your teva. So when you go against your teva, you are revealing that nature is a likus. And that's only possible by someone whose nature isn't to serve Hashem. So the reason avodah is so important is not because we're glorifying ourselves, because that reveals Hashem. Now that's one nakuda. I know I have to tell a story, but everyone, should I test you? We should give out a quiz. Everyone's following.
I was gonna say, can we read? So, can I try?
Sure.
It's just a recap. So, avodah is the changing your nature, and therefore, through changing your nature, therefore you're able to reveal elikus.
We reveal that nature is elikus. Otherwise, how could it be flexible? What is it flexible to? Right? If nature is an entity, and that's the only entity, so how do you? Right. Right. The fact that it's bendable shows us that be'emes it's a likus. We're revealing that teva is a likus.
Why can't it change on its own?
Sorry?
Why can't it change on its own? That's like just a property of nature.
Because the one of the ideas, one of the points of teva is that it doesn't change. And that's something that we all personally experience. In other words, you say, oh yeah, but people get older. But yeah, that too. When we're talking about change, we're talking about change. In other words, people fall into habits, right? It's like we don't even realize suddenly we're in the feeling of the person is that it happened to me. The idea of change is that I caused it to happen. So all change that happens within teva is something that it occurs. It happens to it. It's not a change that's imposed, right? In other words, when we go back to the story of the Ramban, or in whatever form you want to tell the story, that the king stepped out and the Ramban, and he came back and there was a drawing, and the Ramban said, oh, the ink spilled. Right? In other words, the design of the design of the change, design is the wrong word, right? The tikkun of the change, that's what we're talking about. In toihu, the change of toihu is not, that's all part of teva, right? We're talking about change of tikkun. That
like a river is not going to start flowing upside down.
Even a river could go backwards if there's enough rain.
Okay.
Whatever, right? In other words, but that all of that is all within teva. If there's a lot of water and there was a bigger, whatever it is. So now, but no, it's going to remain the water as it is, and now it's going to go up, right? This is a derech agav thing about this question that I don't know anything about the subject, but it's my understanding that DNA is in other words, the people who deal with DNA and with like nano, whatever, but they see the tikkun in all of what they observe. In other words, we look at the world and we see a certain amount of static in the trees, and we don't see wisdom. I'm not talking about the Nefloyes Habayra. The tree is beautiful. There's a certain lack of, there's no brains in the tree. But the mapping, it looks like it was done like the Ramban's, right? It looks like it was done with seichel, right? So that's what, when we talk about change, we're talking about change that was done with seichel. Sometimes, and we're going a little bit off track, and right, sometimes someone will say, I don't know what happened. Yesterday, they were doing everything right, and they were, she was in school, he was in yeshiva, whatever it is. In one day, right? It's all done. What happened? That's all toihu. It's not with seichel. It's not what we're talking about. Anyway, it's a little bit of an overindulgence. And if the question remains, okay, that's why when I share it in the form of an anecdote, I take less responsibility. So I'm just telling you what happened. Okay, what he shared. Okay, I'm going to share a story. I was going to say something else. Oh, very important. We had Parshas Vayera. We also have another Parsha, Va'era. There's a very big difference between Vayera and Va'era. Va'era is present tense. Vayera is past tense. Right? Vayera is a story. Hashem revealed himself to Vayera Elo. Va'era, Hasidus explains that what the Pasuk is saying is that Hashem is continuously available to be revealed to every descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So when we look at Hasidus and we strive to internalize, we say that in a book, there's so much Torah that's in a book, but we want there to be Torah's Chaim. We want our lives to be transformed by Chassidus. What we're saying is that we want to be part of the Va'era experience. We want to experience the revelation of Hashem in our lives. And I just, obviously, for anyone who when we experience it, so it's not enough to experience it once in your life. It's not enough on many levels, right? It's something that our neshama needs. It's like, you could refer back to something that happened a long time ago. Someone could tell you a story that they had with their Rebbe 20 years ago and they're still inspired. But for ordinary people, there's a famous story Friedrich Rebbe writes about a person who 40 years he davened every day because he was I think that's a Machzedek told him in Yechidus, maybe it was earlier, Shomer v'zacher b'dibur echad, that every dibur, every word that he says, he should shomer v'zacher the echad. He should affirm, right, with shmira and zechira, like the positive and the negative, the mitzvahs hasei and the mitzvahs lo hasei. In every word, there should be both dimensions of Hashem echad in every word. So when he davens, that's all he thinks about. It's 40 years later, and he's still so animated. But ordinary people, we need Giluyim more often. We need to experience the Va'era in a more from time to time. And for a person who has not had that experience, to be open and to daven that we should, because that's the fuel of our avodas Hashem. In other words, what result are we looking for in our avodah? The result is that we're going to show that we are masters over ourselves. The result is to show that we could have me'ach shalat of alev, that we're powerful. The result of our avodah is that we experience a little elikus in our life. That's the result. So that's what we're striving for. I hope that that's our goal. And in the change, and that's why so many people complain, and the experience of many people is that they make achlakas. So many people talk, right? A dime a dozen, and they don't hold. They don't know. Someone told me he's uncomfortable going to the oil. He feels like there's such disappointment. He's made so many achlakas and he hasn't kept them. Like, what is he doing going back? And yes, when there's, I'm not judging the person. I'm not saying that this person doesn't have it, or that any of the people. But really, when a person is connected to the Eibishter, what happens is that even some achlakas that our whole life we're striving to implement in our lives, and we've been frustrated, and suddenly they happen on their own. And that's an amazing thing. Suddenly a person turns around, they're thinking to themselves, for years I've been trying to overcome a certain thing, and now I don't even know. Suddenly, I just, like naturally, like I've been led into this space, and all of that is the Indian. That's what we daven. That's the kavanah of our davening, the chassidische davening. Pashat to have a little va'era, that there should be a little gilui elikus. So I want to share a story. It's a very heavy story, and it's in a very different path. But we're going into Chodesh Kislev, so it's Chodesh HaGeula, and it's the Chodesh of Chassidus. Matan Torah of Pnimiyas HaTorah. There are a few versions to the story. I'm not going to say. I'm not. The intent of this story is not to share with you the most authentic version. The point is the point of the story, the punchline. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev was a bechor. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak grew up in a family that weren't Hasidim. And as a Chassid, his family, they were so disappointed in becoming a Chassid that they sat Shiva. They disowned him. And Rav Levi Yitzchak was still a young man, relatively speaking. And we know that at that time, there was a lot of tension, there was tremendous effort against Hasidim. And that itself, for those who study a little the history, do a little research, is not pashut. If you realize that there were people who instigated and pushed. And as things happen in the world, people have agendas and private, people have personal vendettas and all kinds of things, and they injected themselves into public affairs. At that time, Jewish communities had strong leadership, and within the leadership, once it was poisoned. So anyway, Rav Levi Yitzchak had, his mother had a child, a Ben Skunin, was many years younger than him, that was born to the parents. And the story it goes that when the child was about 2 years old, one Shabbos, the family were sitting by the table. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was away from the house. He already had a married sister or two married sisters. There were older children in the house, and the baby choked, and the baby was sitting on the father's lap and was eating challah. The baby choked on challah. The baby was banging on the table, but they didn't realize what was happening because everyone was banging and singing, whatever it was, and the baby passed away. And they called the doctor. A whole tumult. They didn't, I don't know. They didn't know how to do the Heimlich maneuver. But it was a tremendous, obviously a terrible, terrible tragedy. And while all this was going on and everyone was shattered by what had just happened and all the crying and everything, the family members realized that their father, there's something wrong. He's saying, he keeps repeating that he killed his child. And they got to help him get over this thought. And so, first one person noticed and tried to talk to him, and they couldn't get through. And he kept saying, no, he says, it's my fault. He was sitting on my lap. I should have realized I'm a murderer. How could I, and he was in a frenzy. And they kept trying to speak to him and they couldn't get through. And ultimately, one of the son-in-law approached his father-in-law and he said, he said, it could have been worse. And he was shocked. He said, what do you mean it could have been worse? He said he could have grown up like his brother. And when the father-in-law heard it, he calmed down. He accepted the consolation. So, I told you to have a story. Right? So it's difficult for us to imagine. We're coming in a place. On one hand, we say to ourselves that how could we relate the people who started, the pioneers of Chassidus, were in such different circumstances. But today, all of us really are confronted by this type of viewpoint, not from other Yidden, but from secular culture. And the difference between what happened in the last 30 years, I would say this incredible momentum that Chabad really became recognized as a global force only after Gimel Tammuz. So in the world of positivity, there's an incredible Chabad's positioning in the world is so different than it was 30 years ago. It's really transformed. It's amazing. And there's so much goodness, so much has been accomplished. On the other hand, there's a klippa that didn't exist. And it's only in the last 10 or 15 years that the secular world has permeated, it has really entered into our lives in a very strong way. And even in families where people are very sheltered, secular thinking is quite a dominating force. And I would say that in general, if we think in terms of Hasidus, if we use Hasidic language, Hasidus explains that there are two ways to impact someone. There's a makif way and there's a pnimi way. Right? Like let's say here we are, for all of us gathered here tonight. Most of what I say, or all of what I say, you won't remember. In other words, going down, in 3 months from now, if I stopped you in the street and I quizzed you, right? That's the way it works. But the feeling of the night, you'll remember for much longer, right? When you meet a new teacher, the first day of school, maybe some of you are teachers. So the students form an opinion about you on the first or second day. And the chances are that all year, their opinion will be reinforced. It could be very positive. You're a great teacher. They love you. Amazing. It's so fun. and that will remain with them for the rest of their life. Whereas the content, what you're actually teaching them, it's very unlikely that they're going to remember that what you taught them, the prokim tanya, the prokim chumash, the psukim, whatever part of history or historia that you're teaching them. That's what happens. So the makif is more powerful than the pnimi. The makif, the ambiance, the feeling, the environment has more of an impact than the actual words. So the avir, we live in an avir. Now we say more. The avir has more of an impact. Let's say I want to be gentle. I want to say that the avir is 60% and the content is 40%. I don't want to say that the avir is 90% and the content is 10%. When we're teaching our students, that's 40% of what they absorb, but 60% of what they absorb is from the street. Secular culture has an incredible impact. So, I don't know where it comes from. Today, I was listening to two young children talking about some public figure's Twitter account and what they wrote on it yesterday. I'm thinking to myself, God in heaven, Hashem Yishmael, right? Like what? People don't realize. They think it's all benign. So the point is that poison that Levi Yitzchak Barditchever dealt with in his time, we confronted. So it's important, Rav Levi Yitzchak, it's important for all of us. I mean, it's important. I'm assuming that everyone who's here, some of us may be in a discovery stage or phase. We're learning about it. But Hasidus deserves, in my opinion, obviously, that we should have clarity. We should have a sense of incredible commitment to its values that they could weather and they could stand strong to confront really completely all of these forces. And this comes, let's get a little bit to Chodesh Kislev in the days that were discussed. We speak about Rosh Chodesh Kislev and Tes and Yud Kislev and Yutas Kislev. So the order is a little bit difficult, what to speak about first. So I want to say something about Yutas Kislev first. There are and there were hundreds and hundreds of masters of Hasidus. We call in the Chabad world, we call them Gute Yidden, right? They were good Jews, many good Jews. They say that the Baal Shem Tov had 60 Talmidim who were stars, Chevraya Kadisha, and the Maggid had 120. Now, when I say these stars, these 60 or 120 people, they were each Rabbonim they were leaders of communities, and the vast majority of them are authors. So you could go to the library today and read the introduction to the Sfarim of 60 tzaddikim who were Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov. And 120 of the Maggid, and we know their names, and we know the cities where they were Rabbonim, and so on and so forth. Now, the Alter Rebbe was the youngest by far of any of the Talmidim. The Alter Rebbe came to the Maggid when he was 15 years old, and let's say someone like the Toldus was almost 70. And there were many other fantastic tzaddikim at that time. And somehow the Maggid chose this 15, 16-year-old boy to be his son's chavrusa. And let's not forget that his son's name, they called him Avram Hamalach for a reason, right? and if you understand a little bit about who the Maggid was and the story about him having children, I mean, these are very heavy stories. I don't want to shock any. I don't want to. I don't want to have anyone should have nightmares. But they say that the Maggid, his wife miscarried several children because he saw that their neshamas weren't, like, in his mind, they weren't worthy enough. And his Talmidim lobbied with him, and he allowed one to survive, and that was Avram Hamala. Like their neshamas weren't. Yeah, the Mag. I mean, he didn't, like, they didn't go to a clinic.
Why did he say that? Why did he say that? Why?
What do you mean?
Why did he tell his wife?
No, he didn't tell her. They just didn't make it.
Oh.
The neshamas didn't make it. So the Maggid was it's hard for us to imagine the Maggid, right? If we think about if we put this in perspective for a minute, and we think about the Baal Shem Tov as the Avram Avinu, and the Maggid as Yitzchak, right? So the Oila Tmima, right? The searching for perfection is built in, right? There's no room for anything, right? What happened? The Maggid. The famous story that the Maggid came home and the kids were starving, right? And his wife cried to him. And then I think he put his hand in the tefillin bag and there was a coin. Right? He was putting away his tefillin. She came into the room and then he said, no, basically something just happened to us. I lost the right to live this kind of life, meaning he's going to have to become a Rebbe, and we won't go hungry. Right? Right. The famous story: someone came in and there was no furniture in the house, and someone said, there's a limit. There's a limit to asceticism. I mean, a folding table. Like you don't have to be sitting on the floor on a tree trunk. And the Maggid, huh? Yeah. And the Maggid, right? And he said, "No, what do you have with you here?" Because he was traveling. He says, "Hey, Rebbe, what do you want? I'm traveling, right? What do you think? I should bring my beds with me?" So he says, "No, I'm also traveling." Right? So there's no. It's hard for us to imagine the Maggid. How we can't.
It sounds like the opposite of
It sounds.
It sounds a little bit like the opposite of the approach of Chassidus.
We live in a very developed state, right? You know how the Maggid came. The Maggid, we don't know the Maggid's birthday and birth year. Right, because the Maggid wasn't born to a family of Hasidim. There's a story how the Maggid became a Chassid, right? So we could just on this topic alone we could spend the rest of the night. But the point is, I'll just in a nutshell, the Maggid he learned everything, he absorbed everything. His whole life was Torah. He was, let's say, you're right, like he was in a Musar state. And he had many, many questions on the Baal Shem Tov's derech. And he had a close friend who never became a chassid, who would always tell him, you're being too harsh on them. They're good people, they're Yirei Shemayim. And he's like, no, nothing to talk about. And then the Baal Shem, a whole story. And then the Maggid came and met the Baal Shem Tov. And when he met him, the Baal Shem Tov asked him, do you know this in this text? And he said, yes. So he says, please recite it. And the Maggid recited it by heart. It was a Kabbalistic text. And the Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's wrong. And the Maggid thought what he's saying is it's wrong. You didn't repeat it right. Like he's going to repeat it again. And then the Baal Shem Tov began repeating it. And the Maggid later said that every every revelation that was referenced in the Kabbalah was felt in the room when the Baal Shem Tov said it. So he realized that for him, Torah's words for the Magid. And for the Baal Shem Tov, Torah's truth. So he became a chassid right away. And then the Magid, right? If you think of it in that way, the Baal Shem Tov says, the Alter Rebbe said, everything that I ever said, every mimer that I ever said is from my first Farbrengen by the Magid. And I still have plenty to unpack. You know how many Ma'amorei Chassidus there are from the Alter Rebbe? Right? Thousands of Ma'amorim. But imagine if that's the difference. Imagine the difference between the Magid before he met the Baal Shem Tov and just that event. Everything he knew suddenly changed. So that for the Alter Rebbe, everything he knew in one meeting with the Magid was handed the torch. Everything he knew changed. Right? If we imagine if our whole life, everything that we experienced until now, we would just live it one more time, but deeper. So first of all, everything would take more time. So we would have to live 1,000 years just to experience our own life one more time with eyes that see. Right? Imagine. So the Magid like abandoned all these incredible tzaddikim, and the Alter Rebbe, this young boy, the Shama Chadasha. Alter Rebbe said that the Magid taught him that he should look at every yid, that the way their neshama is rooted in machshava hagduma da'ak. What does that mean, machshava hagduma da'ak? In English, machshava hagduma da'ak, essentially what it means is how every person is an integral part of creation. Machshava hagduma da'ak is the place where the purpose of all of creation is held. To view every person, machshava hagduma da'ak, it's not about like going back to what I said before, like self-actualization. It's not about self-actual. It's about Hashem created the world and there's a plan for all of the world. And what's your piece in that master plan? What is your place? How do you like the difference of you not being in the state of purpose, being where you don't belong, and then to be where you do belong? It's not about you. It's about the puzzle of the entire world. It's about the puzzle of all of creation. That's the way the Alter Rebbe views, and that's the way the Rebbe views every person. Can you imagine what that means? Like there's a hole in all of creation if you're in the wrong place. And that's machshava hagduma da'ak. So what becomes a question if we're going to be loving or we're going to be it's like so trivial in relation to like viewing someone as such an instrumental part of the whole bria. And that's the Alter Rebbe's place. We talk about Yutas Kislev, ultimately the Nitzachen, the Alter Rebbe said that the Geula of Yutas Kislev brought about that there will be Yanach Sidim al Ha'olyoino. And for all of us, even if we come back to think about the purpose of, I need a cheat sheet. The purpose of this, I say this Maisa, the purpose of living Chassidus is like we have an entire world where, again, without judgment, but the natural order of the world is that everyone looks to improve their life in whatever that means. You have people who are more sophisticated. Improving their life means that they're going to have a great purpose, right? They'll be remembered as having achieved something great. And you have people who improving their life means to be more comfortable, to have more joy, right? And Chassidus Chabad, the idea, the yesod, the foundation of our life, is about fulfilling our purpose. Right? We say l'chaim, that we should fulfill Ratzein Ha'elyon. Right? What does Hashem want from me? What am I needed for? The famous story with the Alter Rebbe at this moment. Now, I don't. Everyone here is I mean, not everyone here, but we're in varying stages of our life, and in the earlier stage of our life, the point, the work of our life at that point is to strengthen ourselves, to be stronger in our emunah, be stronger in our knowledge, to be more grounded. Right? In other words, we're building ourselves in order so that we should be able to go out and be a force in the world. And then when the Eibishter shows us that the time of investing in ourselves has come to an end, then we go out and we build the world. We build our personal worlds and we impact the world around us. We don't neglect ourselves. We don't forget about our own avodah. Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when we help other people, Nasim, right, your Levi and your Mayach become more refined 1,000-fold. I was in 770 years ago, Rabbi Gutnick from Australia, all of Shalom Fabrein. Rabbi Gutnick went to yeshiva in the Telz yeshiva. And I'll say, for those who don't know Telz yeshiva, I'll just say broadly, like Litvish, let's say. And he said he went into Yechidus, and at that time he was already following the Rebbe's instruction. He was also a chaplain in the army, and he was an askan. He was already an activist. And he said to the Rebbe that he's envious of his study partner, of his chavrusa in Telz. The study is chavrusa in Telz, gives a shir. He's learning Gemara all day. He's learning Nigla. And he's risen to stardom, like and Rabbi Gutnick is saying, look, I love learning, and I also want to give a nice shir and a nice pilpul and whatever it is. So the Rebbe said to him, you will learn. You're going to continue doing your act. You're going to be an activist. You'll continue with your hashpah, with your afatza, with your shlichus, and I give you a bracha that what takes your friend 7 hours will take you 1 hour. That was the bracha. And then, so he told the story, Rabbi Gutnick, and then he said, and now I'm going to give a shir. So he gave a shir in 770 on whatever was being learned at that time. He said, so what are you learning? And then he gave a shir. So, right? So of course we don't neglect ourselves, and our avodah continues. But that there's a difference in where we're up to in our right, at what stage we're up to in our life. If the avodah is to be zokein, meaning to be acquiring knowledge and building ourselves and spending more time davening and learning, or we're in the stage of our life where we have to be with whatever we know, like the Rebbe says, you know Aleph, you teach Aleph. So there's a difference. So that and Yad Chasidim al Yoino, that we're successful. And so that's the Nakuda with the Alter Rebbe, that to recognize that we're not just another Chassidus. And obviously in this short few minutes, it's hard to share the real, like what that really means. Like really you have to talk about who was there. Who was Reb Pinchas Koritzer, and who was Reb Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev? Who was Reb Shmelke and Reb Melech from Lezensk? Like all these incredible people, right? And say and what's the difference? What did the Alter Rebbe, right? Reb Avram Kalisker and all the Alter Rebbe, and here Chassidus Chabad, there's a contrast. All the other Chassidish, all the other groups, it's not about better, not better. That's not the point. The point is Tachlis hakavana of Brias ha'elums. The purpose of all of creation has been handed to. That's where it is. It's with Hasidus Chabad. That's what we're here for, to bring the world to its tachlis. And so that's the union of Yutas Kislev. To say a few words when we talk about the Mittler Rebbe. So really, to talk about the Mittler Rebbe, so I'm just thinking to share with you a thought from a mimer of the Mittler Rebbe. So, and that way, hopefully, it will also follow in this path. I know we're getting a little late, so I'm just we'll keep it tight. So there's a story that the Mittler Rebbe had a sister, and the Alter Rebbe was very. I guess it happens often that fathers are closer to their daughters than to their sons. The sons, they have to rough them up. The daughters, they could just be Hamish with them. Anyway, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but there's such a thing. So the Alter Rebbe was Mekarev, his daughter Freda, the one who's buried inside in Hadich. If anyone was in Hadich, the Alter Rebbe's daughter is in the oil of the Alter Rebbe. It's a famous story. She asked for it. The Chassidim were very hesitant. They're like, "What do you mean? We don't bury the men and women together. Like, what's going on?" And then the Chevra Kadisha were in the room, and she said, "Father, wait, I'm coming. And she passed away. So they said, "All right, whatever she wants." Right? So they buried her in the. No, it's later. Yeah, it was later. Yeah, it was years later. So anyway, so the story goes that the Mittler Rebbe wanted information. Chassidus, he would send his sister, and he would hide in the room. And the Alter Rebbe, Freda, he would tell her ideas of Chassidus. And then one time, the Mittler Rebbe sent her to ask about the Big Day Kahuna, what they mean in Avodah Hashem, and she forgot to ask about the belt, the sash of the Kohanim. So the Mittler Rebbe was hiding, and he tossed out a gartel, and then she noticed, and then the Alter Rebbe realized, and then he canceled, whatever it was. So there's a mimer, a Sukkos mimer, where the Mittler Rebbe speaks about the gartel, and I think this is an incredible idea. We talk about Sukkos, to sleep in the Sukkah, Makif in the Bina, levels, but here the Mittler Rebbe says something incredibly profound. He says that the overgarment of the Kohanim is there's a lot of room between the garment and the body. It's like a makif. The idea of the belt is to keep it close, that it's tight on you. So he says, Yom Kippur, the position of Ne'ilah, of being in a state of Mesiras Nefesh, is far from us. It's like the Me'il, right? It's like this garment that's far. It's like very roomy. Just because you have this Mesiras Nefesh of Shema, it won't necessarily impact your daily avodah. Like when a person feels that they're in this position, that it's like the end of life, then they're going to say Shema Yisrael when they're being tested in this incredible way. But on a day-to-day basis, we feel quite comfortable not living with such intensity and saying, I'm through. The idea of the belt is to bring Mesiras Nefesh close to our body, close to the daily mitzvahs, that all the mitzvahs we do should have in them a flavor. There should be a thread of Mesiras Nefesh in every mitzvah. So, and that's what Sukkot is about. The Sukkah is the Makif. It's the Mesiras Nefesh. Teshvu, you have to bring it close. So imagine the avodah of taking Makifim Debina, of taking the Mesiras Nefesh of Yom Kippur and bringing it close to our mitzvahs. That's the idea. So, we had the Kinus banquet was a few nights ago, And George Rohr, when he was speaking about leverage and like a businessman about why invest in Chabad, his first point was Mesiras Nefesh, with the story from Reb Chaim Brisker. Why was the Torah given? Why was the Beis Hamikdash built on Har HaMoriah, not on Har Sinai? And he said because Har HaMoriah, that's where Mesiras Nefesh happened. Right? Har Sinai Torah, a lot of people know how to learn, but Mesiras Nefesh, that's the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Right? For us, what the Middle Rebbe is saying, yeah, I learned a lot of Chassidus, but what's the point? The point of all the Chassidus that we learn is that we should have some a supercharged. There's something intense that, of course, this is what we do. I'm watching the clock too much. You'll tell me what. You'll throw me out. Right? There's a story. People think this way. You know, the Gvir has a steak every night. And the poor man, when he gets the steak, oh, he's so excited. So you see, who's a grubby young? Who's more Magushim? The poor man is so Magushim. Look, he's savoring every bite and talking about it. I think the Rebbe Rashab said, yeah, he says, the poor man, if he doesn't have it, okay, he'll go hungry like last night. But the Gvir, if he doesn't have it, that doesn't work. Right? Then it's the end of the world. Right? You know, some people say, yeah, you should give kids little exposure to television. Don't worry, it's not good if you keep it away from them. Then when they get older, when they get it, they go crazy. You still can't make up for 3 hours a day from 2 years old. But for us, that when we need, that we should have the sense that we need our Yiddishkeit with some Mesiras Nefesh. We're not for sale. Our Yiddishkeit is not for sale. It's real. You know, my wife's grandfather used to say, we don't give it away for a plate of beet soup. Barateller borscht in Russia was a hot item. Right? We don't give away our Yiddishkeit for anyway. Right? To be really Kislev. So what I would say is like this: we're living so many years later. It never became better. You know, we're after Gimel Tammuz. We know that the Rebbe, the requests, the campaigns, the takonos, the heroes, were dynamic, and they were very with a lot of awareness for where we are. In other words, the Rebbe looked at the people. What are we ready for? What the Rebbe wanted that when people go to a country, they should utilize the culture for Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe made parades. Why? Because that's what we do in America, or rather, that's what we do in New York State. In other words, 4th of July, how do you celebrate? You make parades. In other words, in the towns, they make parades. It's an American thing. You win a World Series, you make a parade, a Macy's Day parade, this kind of parade. Everyone's busy with parades. Oh, we make parades? We're going to make a Jewish parade. It's something that's American. You take ideas in the culture, of the local culture, and you utilize it for Yiddishkeit. That's why the Rebbe, in other words, the Rebbe expressed he doesn't want someone to go on shlichus and keep the style of where he came from. No. Learn about the people, learn about the culture, and from within. That's the dira b'tachtonim. That is dira b'tachtonim. So think about it. That's what it is. Okay, in the culture. So the chain, what we watched, what happened from Tafshin Lamed Ches till Tafshin Nun Beis, hundreds and hundreds of hayrois and new takonis and insights, and the whole mahalach of Mashiach, and it could all be really. There are so many oisius. Again, every one of these items we could spend a whole night discussing. It's an unbelievable. Even the Sikha, when the Rebbe said, from now on, I give it over to you, to recognize that the whole social media challenge that the world is facing is that now it's in the hands of the people. Really, that's what it is. The Rebbe says, I'm giving it over to you. 10 years before it started, before eBay started, which is all up to you. It's all the people that are governing, and it's all you're selling and you're buying and you're governing and you're rating. It's all, the Rebbe said, I'm giving it over to you, meaning bringing Mashiach is not, I'm not going to instruct you, do this. You have, it's a free market. Really, it was the most empowering thing that the Rebbe ever said. And people were so lost. People didn't see it that way. So all of this is really a tremendous gift that we received. I mean, you know the story that Nissen Nemenov was here. The Rebbe, he was in Yechidus. When he came out of Yechidus, he was sobbing. He farbrang the whole night afterwards, and he said he asked the Rebbe a question that when he farbrings in yeshiva, so there are all kinds of students, and some of them are not from a Chabad background. So what should he demand? Like davening 6 hours, like to meditate? Like what should he talk about? So the Rebbe says you should learn. Do what I do. I only speak about it. You know, when I ask the people to do something, I first think about if the majority of the people are capable, are able to do it, then I ask. And if not, I don't. In other words, that's. And by the way, really, it's a din shulchan aruch. That's another story. In other words, a gzeira she'ein roiv hatzibur. So he says, imagine the Rebbe must have so many things that the Rebbe wants to say, but he doesn't say them because. And that's what Reb Nissen walked away with. He was so broken that the Rebbe, we're not allowing the Rebbe to share. Oh, I'm sure he has so much more to say. Right? So, but the point is that everything the Rebbe said was shaped by us. And that just gives us more access. The threshold, the step has been lowered to allow us to join and be the Rebbe's chassidim at any point. The entry point is right there for us. I mean, we're all in. So I want to wish everyone to experience this Chodesh of Kislev, Chodesh HaGeula, as a personal Geula. And I don't say this lightly. For a person, right, to be in Golus is, what do we have to say? Being in Golus is the worst thing possible. It's the most unnatural thing. And many of us experience unnatural things in our life. And that's Golus. So this Chodesh HaGeula should be of a personal Geula to each and every one of us. L'chaim.
Thank you.
It's okay with me. Do you mind if we take a picture with the group?
Oh boy.
Are you up for that?
Photoshop
You can just stay right there. That is. Are you okay with that?
Whatever, do what you need to do, and I'll say.
Okay, we'll start with that, and then I'll do the next piece. Oh. Okay, everybody in. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you. Is it okay if I trophy? Okay. Okay. Well.
Okay. Okay. Right.
On behalf of all of us, we wanted to thank you.
Okay.
And for every hour that you spent with us is 1 hour you didn't spend with your wife. So we want to send a gift to your wife. When she lights Shabbos candles, she puts the match.
And then I clean it up.
Exactly.
I'm done. Okay.
Thank you.
Amen, amen. I thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you very, very much.
Thank
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please eat.
It's recording. Oh. Okay, they changed the